Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Adi, and today we have a very special team report from the North American International Championships, and I am joined by your North American International Champion, James Evans. How are you doing?
Hey, Adi, I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, thank you for coming on the channel, and congratulations on winning. Winning the North American Championships.
Yeah, thank you.
And so I guess for those who don't know you, do you want to introduce yourself?
Alrighty, sure. So my name is James Evans. Chances are, if you don't know from this performance by last week, I am a former world champion in the seniors division. I won 2018 Worlds, and I also won an Internats in seniors, EUIC. From there, I've just been kind of playing as a master and going about my tournament career. I guess that's a good way to phrase it. I've just been playing in tournaments, doing well, but never really feeling like I've did a breakout performance. I've gotten a couple top fours of regionals. In fact, the week before NAIC, I top four Milwaukee regionals with this exact same team. So I guess this is a double team report in a sort of way.
And I think a lot of people just thought it was a matter of time, knowing how consistent you were and how the level of skill that you had. And so I think no one was surprised that you made top cut, and of course you ended up winning the entire thing. But yeah, so let's jump into the team. So this is the team that you used at both Milwaukee and the North American Championships. Why did you choose to build around Calric Shadow Groudon?
So ever since I think it was like probably the week of Salt Lake City, I've kind of been interested in Calyrex Shadow Rider as a Pokemon. It's really unique in what it can do. It's really strong. But a lot of people like to use it specifically as a support mon with Snarl and Will-O-Wisp specifically. You're going to see a lot of them with Zacian as its support, or as secondary restricted. And I personally wasn't really a fan of it. It just wasn't clicking. So when Chongjun Peng won Salt Lake undefeated with Rinyasun, I jokingly said to a couple of my friends, I was like, all right, so now we're going to run Calyrex Shadow with Charizard, because now you can unnerve the Charty Berry on other Charizards and Ancient Power them and knock them out. And this is where this team was made. And I jokingly called it Sun that beats Sun that beats Sun, because Chongjun's team was pretty designed to be a countermeasure to standard Sun that you would see with Life Orb Charizard, in a sense. So this is kind of the first rough draft I made of the team, and I started laddering with it like a lot. Chances are, if you've seen these six, it was probably me on ladder. And it was really good. And I kind of decided, I was like, well, I didn't like Zacian a whole lot, because you kind of lose out on a lot of things when you pick Zacian as your restricted Pokemon. For one, you lose out on a Dynamax slot, and in not only a double restricted format, but just in a Dynamax format in general, you kind of want to have those options open to you, because Dynamax is not so much about how much you take away from it, but how much you take away from your opponent specifically. You can use your Dynamax to basically deplete their resources either super early on, or you take away from their Dynamax, which is something I like doing a lot with this team. Specifically Groudon, you see that G-Max Charizard there, and no, it's a ruse. Groudon's like the main max Pokemon, because it's just a really strong physical attacker, and it kind of pairs up with Calyrex really well in that regard, because it's similar to Zacian in aspects where it's like really strong physical attacker. It kind of beats a lot of the things that Calyrex doesn't want to go up against, like Incineroar. But you have the added coverage of not only Dynamax, but you're just kind of bulkier in general against some specific Pokemon, mainly Incineroar, just because then you don't have two restricteds that lose to Incineroar. Having it be able to max is just really strong in general, because you can ignore Fake Out. You don't have to worry about those mind games. Just having the Assault Vest in general means you're going to have a lot more bulk against special targets, specifically opposing Calyrex. And you're going to see that there is a Shadow Claw on this Groudon, just because I decided randomly I didn't really like Heavy Slam. I didn't like Heat Crash. I didn't like Bulldoze. I didn't like any of those other moves that Groudon could opt for. And I kind of just randomly saw in the builder that you can have Shadow Claw on this Pokemon. And I was like, wait a minute. It's kind of good, actually. So I started running it. And all my friends were like, wow, James, this makes zero sense. But I was like, you Oko Calyrex with it. And funnily enough, it's like kind of caught on ever since. And I don't think I had a whole lot to do with that, but I like to think that I did, just because it was really cool back in March when like this was like the new thing. But since then, a lot of Groudons have started to run it.
Yeah, and I think that if people haven't caught on to it by now, they certainly caught on to it after Internats, when I think it like was one of the defining texts that won you that finals. But
Yeah.
I guess we can talk about that a little later in the video.
Yeah.
When did you choose to switch over to the team that you used at Milwaukee and Internats?
So I ran the first team at one live event, and it was Joe. Most of you probably know Joe UX9. He ran an X9 tour in New York, I believe in April. And so basically my one major takeaway from that version of the team is that it's extremely hyper offensive, and it doesn't really have a good like backbone to it, which was like what Gastron and Incineroar were supposed to accomplish. It was like, I have this very strong Choice Specs Calyrex with a Whimsicott and a Groudon that kind of can just go nuts and Tailwind. There's a Zard there if it needs to do any damage. Let's have this defensive backbone of Incin and Gastrodon, because the team is extremely glass as is and needs some form of defensive mode to beat teams like Trick Room. And my main takeaway was like, once again, it was extremely glass. So you don't really have a lot of reliance on playing well as much as you do just kind of relying on the autopilot that the team has to begin with. You bring 4 Pokemon to a matchup and just kind of hope it goes your way. And that was the same thing I kind of deducted from the ICs, the April IC and the Global Challenge. And during the Global Challenge, I placed really well, but I realized I wasn't using Charizard at all. And every game I pretty much Dynamaxed Groudon, because Groudon was just more consistent. It was tankier. It was more reliant in general. So the team had a Kyogre flaw to begin with, just from these 6 alone. Gastrodon was pretty much your only way to deal with it. And if Gastrodon went down, then you had problems, because everything else is so frail. So I decided to switch it out for Thundurus, and then we had a team of Calyrex, Whimsicott, Thundurus, Groudon, Gastrodon, and Incineroar. And eventually, over the week before Secaucus, I was like, well, this is still really strong, but it kind of just struggles in general, because now I don't so much have a Kyogre problem as I have a Groudon problem now, because I can't damage that. So now the problem was, okay, we need to beat Groudon, because these 6 are pretty good into it, but I still don't have any way of like pressuring it off the field or scaring it. And so I kind of talked it over with my friend Navjeet. Some of you probably know him as NJ11 or Jones as a starter. And we kind of decided on Venusaur as the last slot. Not only does it pair up well with Groudon, but it's just a pretty strong Pokemon in general. Good grass type, beats Kyogre as well. So it's extremely... I have many Kyogre answers now. Its move pool is just really great in general for this team. It's a little unorthodox just looking at it, but it was the moveset we decided on initially, because it was just really good at covering the bases that the team is weak to. And Sleep Powder is always a good out, even against bad matchups. And from there, that's pretty much how I made this 6. And as soon as Venusaur was added to the team, I immediately decided, okay, well, Focus Sash isn't being used anymore. Let's throw it on Calyrex and give it a slightly more supportive role. It just makes it more consistent into matchups where dark types are prevalent, especially things like Throat Chop or Foul Play. It just means that it's hanging on more and it's doing more damage, even though you're getting rid of Choice Specs. But it just means it can be more consistent. It can protect against things. It's doing more things to impact the game just by staying on the field, because it's so threatening.
Yeah. And I know you said you brought these 6 to Secaucus Regionals. We actually have a 2-minute report on the channel where you talked about this team after Secaucus Regionals. What changes did you make between New Jersey and Milwaukee?
So for a while, I didn't make any changes because I was very confident with the team as it was. I was kind of just telling my friends, I was like, this team is really great. And I think it just comes down to whether I play better or not. And I think at Secaucus, I played just fine. I was like, for my first tour back, really happy with it, because it was my first major in over 3 years. And I was just very happy to be back and playing. Especially with that stacked of a top cut, I was like, I can't be mad placing 9th at this. So I didn't really feel like too necessarily nervous with changing the team. I felt very good in general with the 6 that I had. And then I gave this team to another friend, Matthias Long, who some of you may know as Matadome, and he used the 6 I used at Secaucus to place top 4 at the Singapore Nationals. And from there, we kind of started talking more and more about how to make the team better without changing too much fundamentally, because we knew it was a very strong 6, just going up against a lot of things, because it doesn't really rely on specific matchups or anything. It just kind of relies on you being the better player. And like, admittedly, like, that's kind of like a scary thing to say, because you kind of want your team to be good and do a lot of things. But when it's generally trading positive matchups, so it's like 55-45, it's kind of good anyways, because it like, once you just start practicing the team more and more, you're gonna get a better feel for it, and your opponent's not gonna know what they're playing up against, as long as you know what you're playing up against and you know what your team is capable of. So our main issue was Trick Room and how to beat it, because Trick Room in general is just really difficult for these 6. Not so much specifically with like any Pokemon besides Calyrex Ice Rider. Calyrex Ice Rider is god awful for this team. Just looking at the Pokemon, your really only matchup is like Incineroar and Gastrodon, which was initially what we were like prepping into, and we were bringing every single game, because you need to stop it some way. You need to lower its attack with Intimidate. You need to yawn it, because Gastrodon's going to be slower generally. But like, it was still ridiculously inconsistent, because Amoonguss is also a Pokemon that was like picking up steam with Calyrex Ice Rider and just Palkia in general. And it is pretty much unwinnable if they have an Amoonguss. You pretty much just have to rely on them throwing the game or getting extremely lucky with like sleep turns. So it made fighting Trick Room extremely inconsistent. And even though it was on a dip in North America, where like people were either using Reshiram Calyrex Ice or they weren't using Trick Room at all, it was still a matchup that I wanted to prep for. Just going into Milwaukee, and we started testing safety goggles, and then we started testing taunt individually. Like, they were both separate sets at a time, and we kept Shukaberry on because we felt it was more consistent into just ground types in general. But by the last day, it was literally like 2 a.m. The day of Milwaukee regionals. I was prepping with friends, and we just kind of decided from there. I kind of had this idea in my head. I was like, well, Goggles Taunt is extremely strong, because you just ignore Amoonguss and you can stop Trick Room, and it's pretty consistent. And the matchups, I didn't actually practice Trick Room on ladder at all with Goggles Taunt Incin. It just so happened that I played like every other matchup. And the main takeaway was just like, well, it's not negatively impacting any matchup where I'm bringing Incin still, like even where the ground types are prevalent. So I theorized, I was like, well, it can't hurt to try it. So we kept prepping it versus Calyrex Ice, and we all openly admitted, like, this is still a horrible matchup, but let's just run it anyways and see what happens. I didn't end up fighting a single Calyrex Ice Rider in Milwaukee, but it just so happened to perform better, and I was like, well, I guess it works, because I never needed Snarl. I never needed to tank a ground move with Incin, or if it did, it lived anyways. So it was like, okay, well, it worked out well here. Let's just bring it to NAIC, because it can't possibly hurt to run again, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I will say that after you showing at Milwaukee, my team building group that includes Justin Current, who got top 4, we did prep specifically for this matchup, and we did think that it was still pretty good for us, despite the safety goggles Incin. But definitely gives you a little bit more of a fighting shot, makes us actually play Pokemon a little bit. So I do definitely agree with that choice, just having a playable matchup. And like you said, giving yourself the room to outplay your opponents is really, really valuable. But I guess on that note, do you want to talk me through the rest of the Pokemon on the team and why you chose to run the sets and the items that you did?
Sure. So we'll just start with Calyrex again, because it was the main Pokemon I wanted to build around initially with the team. But as I played more and more with it, it kind of fell into this equally supportive and offensive role. I think Calyrex just kind of encompasses a lot of what you can do with balance in the format. It's clearly just a balanced Pokemon in general. Not balanced in the sense that it's not broken. It's still very broken, but like, its move pool is just excellent. It has great coverage in general. As you can see, I just have its 2 stabs and Will-O-Wisp and Protect, which is like pretty standard, but like most balanced Calyrexes you'll see will run Snarl on it instead of Expanding Force. And I ran Expanding Force for a couple of reasons, namely just you hit Amoonguss, you hit Venusaur, it's psychic type move, you can do a little bit with it. It's kind of cool what you can do with it though is you can Dynamax Calyrex if it absolutely has to, and now you set up Psychic Terrain, and on top of that you can like boost with it, and then you now have Expanding Force in Psychic Terrain that you just manually set up once you get out of Max. It never really happened in tournament, but it was a cool theoretical. Will-O-Wisp is just like also standard on Balance Calyrex. It's extremely good just in general to neuter Pokemon like Zacian and other Groudons, and like something jokingly between my friend group that a lot of people said was like, any turn you're not clicking Astral Barrage with Calyrex is like a waste of time. Which I can now safely say is wrong. Like, there's so much Calyrex can do that just like makes it such a valuable asset in general. Like Wisp is genuinely just one of the best things about Calyrex. The fastest Will-O-Wisp in the metagame is just insane. Barring Sableye, but I'm going to pretend Sableye does not exist for this team report. But it's just a really strong Pokemon in general. Focus Sash makes you live hits pretty much every single time. Protect lets you stay on the field longer than the opponent really wants you to. Astral Barrage is Astral Barrage, and Expanding Force is pretty unique for the situations that I required it in. Next up, I'll just go over Groudon again so we can get the restricted pairings out of the way. Groudon is also one of the best Pokemon in the format, hands down. It's, funnily enough, probably the most consistent Pokemon outside of Gastrodon, like, to win internets. But, like, Blades is standard. Stone Edge, I wanted just because it hits Charizard harder, and when you're not running Rock Tomb, you shouldn't be running Rock Slide to begin with, because that doesn't OHKO anything. And when you have something like Unnerve, it's just, you just want to run Stone Edge. You want to do as much damage as possible. You don't care about missing. You just want to hit them. It's stronger into Thundurus. It's pretty much stronger into everything. It has a higher crit ratio, so you have higher odds of just straight up knocking something out. Fire Punch was unanimously decided from the beginning because I do not like Heat Crash. I find Heat Crash extremely inconsistent. It's very difficult to run in situations where you early game max and they late game max, because you now suddenly are running, you lack one more option against something like Landorus or Kartana, which I think was even on the NAIC stream. Gabriel Legati Dynamaxed his Kartana in front of Chongju Peng's Groudon, and he couldn't touch it because he had Heat Crash, and Heat Crash just does not work against Dynamax Pokemon. You hit Zacian and Calyrex Ice Rider more consistently. The only trade-off is that you're not hitting Rillaboom with a guaranteed OHKO, but most of the time you're OHKOing it anyways, so I didn't really care. And now we get to talk about Shadow Claw again. Shadow Claw is just an awesome fourth move on Groudon, because you not only just, you hit Calyrex hard, you also hit Ludala extremely hard, and you also just have the benefit of having a consistent move. I mean, if you need to absolutely hit something and you're in rain, Shadow Claw is actually your best option because it cannot miss, and it also has a high critical hit ratio. So I guess if you wanted to be cheeky, you could run Scope Lens Groudon and get that 50% on both Stone Edge and Shadow Claw. But it just made Groudon extremely consistent, even in situations where the opponent didn't feel like it was going to be. Max Phantasm is this extremely cool option for a lot of Pokemon that don't expect it, or are trying to like balance out an endgame against Dynamax Groudon by Intimidate cycling. Just like burning White Herbs, being super effective on Pokemon like Calyrex and Lunala, even at -1, and just knocking them out is crazy good. It was just a really good Pokemon in general. Solvest made it tank a ton of hits. You can Max Quake up and just buff every Pokemon on the party. Stone Edge is fantastic. I can't really say any more about Groudon. That like it was, I think it is just the best restricted in the format. If you're not considering Calyrex and Zacian existing, it's definitely the most consistent, I want to say, with a question mark. Like, of course you have inaccurate moves, but that's just sometimes the game you play with Groudon. Next up, I'll just go out over the, I'll go over Gastrodon. I'm kind of going in like a weird order compared to the Pokepace, but like, I just want to go over like the 4 Pokemon I initially had, and then the additions, which were Thundurus and Venusaur. Gastrodon was always just kind of implied to be the anchor of the team. It's defensive, like extremely defensive. Its typing is great. It walls Kyogre. It walls just a lot of Pokemon in general, especially with max Quake boosts. It's kind of absurd the level of bulk Gastrodon can get, even without Recover. Which made it just like this really big endgame threat for a lot of teams. Or even in preview, it's just a really scary Pokemon to go up against because you have that mind game of, are they going to bring Gastrodon or not? And like a lot of teams will often just have Gastrodon answers on them, but because they either have to predict you not like bringing or not bringing Gastrodon, it's very easy for them to either leave their Gastrodon answers behind or the Pokemon that Gastrodon beats entirely in the first place. So it's a really good team preview mon above all things, which, in a game like Pokemon where mental game is everything, I find, just in my personal opinion, it's really good. It's just one of the best Pokemon in general, I think. Its set is extremely standard by the books. Ice Beam, Earth Power, Yawn, Protect, Leftovers. Ice Beam lets you hit Lando and anything in the air. Earth Power lets you hit anything that's not in the air. Yawn is arguably its best move because it can pressure Dynamax Pokemon. It can just pretty much pressure anything that threatens Gastrodon in general. And Protect is obviously there to let you stall like turns of Yawn, turns of Leftovers, pretty much just like Gastrodon, sit there and tank anything that it's willing to tank and then let the other Pokemon do their jobs. Incin is Incin as well. It's part of that defensive backbone that I was very confident in, Gastrodon, Incineroar, and also Groudon. I think these three are just the best defensive core in the format, like by a long shot. A lot of Pokemon can fit with them, and they're just really strong in general. They can all pivot in on each other. They can all take hits very comfortably. Incin, as you can see, is safety goggles. When we went over how safety goggles taunt kind of like lines up into a lot of matchups. Fake Out, obviously, just because it's Incin. Flare Blitz, a lot of people asked me a question where it was like, are you really comfortable just running Flare Blitz as your only offensive move? And I want to just say yeah, because I never really felt like I needed a dark move. Even with Snarl, I kind of just realized I was like, there isn't really a necessarily like important need for a dark move on my Incineroar because I already have my own Calyrex Shadow Rider and I already have Shadow Claw and Groudon. So anything that I would realistically want to hit with a dark move on Incin is kind of already covered. And the only Pokemon I can think of that doesn't get hit by Expanding Force or Shadow Claw is Indeedee, which doesn't really want to get hit with a Max Quake anyways, or anything physical for that matter. So Taunt was just really strong in general throughout the tournament. Not so much like even when using it, but so much like stopping Pokemon like Grimmsnarl from doing the things that they do when you don't have Fake Out available to you anymore is just really strong. You can just stop a lot of things in their tracks with Taunt. Buy you some time, pretty much. Like that's the job of Taunt. And Parting Shot is standard Parting Shot. It's just lets you pivot out. And with Pokemon like Incin or like Incin, Gastrodon, Groudon, you really like want to play that pivot game, especially in matchups where it's not so much favorable, where you want to juggle and make sure your opponent is not like available to get attacks off, or they can burn their Dynamax and you can just stall it out and punish them later. So next is Venusaur, and I'll go over Venusaur pretty abruptly because I also kind of described it in the changes that I made to the team. It's Koba Berry, which was another item that I felt like wasn't necessarily important to how Venusaur played as much as it was just like a precaution to help me get through matchups easier. It was similar like to Safety Goggles in the fact where like it was almost never activating throughout the tournament. But just because I had it, it meant I felt a lot more confident in doing specific plays. Like you can Sleep Powder in front of Yveltals and Charizards and Thunderuses, just knowing the fact that you will survive the turn because you have Koba Berry. And I didn't want to give up Focus Sash on a Pokemon like Calyrex, so Koba Berry was just the next best option when Life Orb and everything else was pretty much taken. Leaf Storm and Weather Ball are kind of standard. There was a consideration for a very decent amount of time to run Earth Power and over like Weather Ball and Sludge Bomb. The initial set had, like when I was initially building it, had Earth Power, and it was kind of one of those considerations where a lot of people will look at it and tell me like, no Earth Power, and I'm like, yeah, kind of. It wasn't really ever needed for anything because I already have Groudon and Thundurus. They both beat Incineroar. Like a lot of this team actually beats Incineroar, funnily enough, but I kind of just decided like Weather Ball was necessary for Zacian and Kartana just because Venusaur needs something to hit them. If it doesn't, then it kind of struggles. And because I didn't really need Earth Power, I would rather have the coverage for Weather Ball because it can, funnily enough, and I'll probably go over this later because it did come into play at some point. It can turn into rock and water and ice type attacks, which is funnily enough like decently useful because you can catch certain things on switch-ins with it or catch Incineroar with it anyways. So you didn't really lose out on anything. I didn't really lose out on anything by not including Earth Power. And Sludge Bomb was actually excellent. It was such a good coverage move because it's one of those things where like because you run Leaf Storm, you run Weather Ball, you run Earth Power. A lot of what those things have in common is that they're inconsistent on Venusaur. Namely, Leaf Storm is overheat in the sense that it's going to drop your special attack after you use it. Weather Ball and Earth Power don't get stab. Weather Ball's a little more consistent, I find, though, just in general for hitting things because it's so strong. But they both don't get stab. Sludge Bomb does, however. And because you have stab, you just hit a lot of things hard outside of Dynamax anyways, notably Grimmsnarl and Rillaboom. But you also have access to Max Ooze, which makes Venusaur extremely threatening. There were many times throughout both tournaments where I clicked Max Ooze with Venusaur and I hard switched Calyrex in, and now suddenly I have both Choice Specs and Focus Sash on my Calyrex. And it pretty much just turned into a monster from there. It's very easy to get going with Max Ooze. Even just in general, Max Oozing on your first 2 turns with Venusaur and then following it up with G-Max Vine Lash just to get the most possible out of your Vine Lash is just insanely good. Because even though it's a boost that doesn't really necessarily affect the whole team, it's only affecting 2 Pokemon outside of it. And I don't think I actually ever brought Gastrodon and Venusaur to the same game. So it's pretty much only affecting 1 Pokemon, and that's Calyrex. But it's so impactful in the sense that like not only is it let me buy time in my max so I can punish with Vine Lash like at +2, it just makes Calyrex this complete beast that just kind of shreds through Pokemon if the opponent isn't prepared for it. And then Sleep Powder is Sleep Powder. It's an out for every matchup, even the bad ones. So sometimes you just have to click it, and luckily it worked out a lot in my favor. And then finally we have Thundurus, and Thundurus was probably, I don't want to say the least used member of the team. There's always going to be one Pokemon that is, but Thundurus was also just extremely, really consistent in general because this team kind of struggles against Charizard. Just in preview, you look at the 6 and they're like, this kind of sucks against Charizard. You kind of get blown away by a lot of its attacks because Gastrodon and Incin don't preferably want to max into it. Venusaur doesn't want to max into it. Calyrex doesn't want to max into it. So it really only leaves you with Thundurus and Groudon. And Groudon cannot outrun Charizard, so it struggles a lot in that sense anyways because you get wildfired. And at that point, Charizard's already gotten off what it wants to. So Thundurus was pretty much the next best solution instead of running your own Charizard. Thundurus pretty much was just no nonsense. It was, I'm going to hit Kyogre and Charizard extremely strong, and you also have to watch out because you can't intimidate me. It was the team's max air streamer, but on top of that, running Life Orb, I knew as soon as I put Thundurus on the team, I wanted it to be Life Orb anyways, because any other item I find with Thundurus is not particularly useful because you struggle to knock out Charizard with your max lightning. And I think pretty much one of the, if not the standout feature of Thundurus is that it can do that. It can knock out with max lightning, and then it just continues its job of max air streaming or anything. So I immediately knew Life Orb was the item I wanted to go with. It just makes Thundurus stronger. It makes its it just makes its damage output stronger, and especially when it's outside of max and you just want to do the most damage possible with a Pokemon that's not really going to be doing a whole lot of damage outside of Dynamax. Every piece of damage counts. Fly, obviously, max airstream. You just want to have those dual stab options. It was the only max airstreamer on the team, so it needed to do that job and do it very well. And then I chose Brick Break as its last move, which is kind of standard for Thundurus in general. But a lot of people I saw at both tournaments ran different moves on their Thundurus. They ran Iron Tail, they ran Foul Play, they ran Crunch, they ran pretty much anything that wasn't Brick Break. And I think, like I said, Thundurus is just extremely no nonsense. It doesn't want to go out of its comfort zone especially with a Pokemon like this where it just wants to Dynamax and it just wants to do what it has to do. So Brick Break was consistent in giving me Max Knuckle for Pokemon like Groudon, but it also has the extra side effect of breaking screens. And when people usually see a balanced team like this, I don't know if you would really perhaps call this balanced, but like a team that's like very kind of slow paced like this, or kind of relies on seeing how the opponent plays it out. A lot of what they'll try and do immediately is set up screens. And a lot of the time, I would just be able to brick break those away. Either before Thunderous Dynamaxes or after it Dynamaxes, because, like I said, Groudon was kind of the main maxer the entire time I've been running this team. So a lot of what I would do is you can, weirdly enough, bait people into thinking you're going to Dynamax Thundurus because it's just that prevalent of a Dynamax Mon. Like people would be like, there's no reason not to Dynamax it. So a lot of the times I would be able to catch things off guard by just not Dynamaxing, and they would go for the other Pokemon. Usually it'd be Groudon or Incineroar. And I could just break away the screens. And not only would that either buy me time to just use Max again on Thundurus, or it would just buy me time to use something in the back for Dynamax. And I could kind of really play into my opponent's like mind games with that one. Like you like they're expecting Thundurus to Dynamax, so they put a lot of resources into either stopping Thundurus from Dynamaxing or knocking it out as soon as possible. So you can kind of just let them do their thing into Thundurus, and Thundurus doesn't really care because it's already done its job. It's kind of taken away the spotlight from my other Pokemon for them to just kind of finish things off.
Right. And in that respect, it is a lot like Charizard, which is the Pokemon it replaced, in that everyone has a game plan for Thundurus. A lot of times it's a very linear game plan because it is such a powerful, threatening Pokemon. And so if your opponent is forced to respect it in Team Preview, if they're forced to lead against it with their like anti-Thundurus lead, then it really does enable the rest of your team to do what it wants to, even if you didn't ever intend on bringing it. But yeah, and then also on top of that, I think one of the things that impressed me the most about Emilio Forbes' run at New Jersey Regionals, which he won, was how he used Thundurus, and how normally, like you said, people think that you're just going to max Thundurus and kind of go in. He was really good about preserving his max on Thundurus and using that pressure really effectively to allow his other Pokemon to play, and then maxing Thundurus in the late game or maxing something else entirely. I don't think I got to see you bring Thundurus on stream. If you did, I might have missed it. But
I think I did versus Joe game 1, which I ended up losing anyways. So let's not talk about that.
But yeah, I guess on that note, do you want to talk about how you actually play the team and how you approach some of the matchups that you expected to face?
Okay, so a lot of what, like, you just brought up Emilio Forbes and like how he played his Thunders very differently, and a lot of like there are a lot of strengths that are similar to that team that I kind of just when I watched Emilio play, I was like, dang, I have a lot to learn just like about this team in general, because our teams are fundamentally similar, but they're also very different because I have Groudon, and Groudon can Dynamax, and I also have a Venusaur that's just a lot more offensive than Rillaboom, and it also has that Sleep Powder option. So a lot of my matchups I tried to approach similarly, but also because I had that extra pressure from Venusaur and Groudon, it lets you play not so much freely, but it lets you play a lot more aggressively into things like that, because one of the strengths I think this team has is its team preview. You see all 5 of or like all 6 of these Pokemon, and you kind of like sweat a little bit, because Gastrodon is one of those Pokemon that's scary in team preview. Venusaur is one of those Pokemon that's scary in team preview. Thundurus is one of those Pokemon that's scary in team preview. Like, bare minimum, half the team is demanding some respect in some sort of way from the opponent that they have to either not bring answers to, because something like Gastrodon can completely wall them, or they are forced to bring answers to and reveal their hands to me, because something like Venusaur can easily just sweep the game with Sleep Powder or Vine Lash if they don't like reveal anything that countermeasures it. So a lot of balanced teams like that, like opposing balanced teams, or just like in general, they had to reveal a lot of things against me in game 1, just to make it through the game. And even if I lost that, I was able to kind of just like bounce back and win game 2 and 3. So a lot of like standard builds, like one of the ones I ran into the most at NAIC and Milwaukee was Zacian Kyogre, and it either comes in the form of Tornogre, or it comes in the form of something more balanced like Rillaboom, Grimmsnarl, Incin, Zapdos, any relative combination of Pokemon that are also bulky that don't want to die. So a lot of what I usually would do was just kind of lead defensively game 1, and I think I actually did lose almost every game one against those teams at NAIC in Milwaukee, just because there wasn't a whole lot I can do without information. Once I pretty much got that information, though, I was able to kind of download what they would do. I apologize if I'm like not saying a whole lot that's like, oh, you just kind of need to play the team and feel it for yourself. But like, it's kind of hard to describe with a team that's like, it's so flexible to bring all 6 Pokemon into a given matchup. But like generally my game plans would either consist of going Gastrodon or Venusaur into something like Zashi and Kyogre, because like I said, there's so many threats in preview that they're going to have to like inevitably bring one answer to one Pokemon and drop one answer to another. So it was really strong in matchups like those. Something more common probably that everyone knows about is Rinya Sun. And it was a matchup that I kind of practiced a lot in general because I was either losing to it on ladder or like not doing well against it in general because it was such a rough matchup. So a lot of what it comes down to is just when you're playing like high level Pokemon, it's very easy to assume the opponent will do something just because they are a skilled player and that they will think of some wacky play to do that counter reads you and just obliterates you. Especially with Pokemon like Charizard, which is like Charizard is super strong because it instills a lot of mind games in the opponent because you can just lead it and it will either max flare or max wildfire turn 1, knock something out, or it will protect and switch and do all these things that kind of just like get you into a bad position. And one of those things that I just kind of had to learn was you just have to not care like at all what the opponent does. You kind of just click Max Lightning into it, and if you catch it, you catch it. Which did happen a lot. I was able to just kind of catch them, and like I didn't have to think about it at all. I was like, okay, I'm just gonna click Fake Out into the other slot, and I'm going to Max Lightning this Charizard. And I watched Charizard drop to like 90% turn 1. It was like just kind of not only having plays that like you could go by, like even in situations where something like it switches to Groudon and now I Max Lightning into a Groudon and wow, I look real stupid. Generally it kind of worked out in my favor anyways because Thundurus is such a strong Dynamaxer to begin with, and usually the accompanying Pokemon to Charizard was Grimmsnarl. So Grimmsnarl isn't doing a whole lot to begin with, and I can kind of just still get away with clicking Max Airstream into something like Groudon, which is a big asset to their team anyways. And I can just switch in my Groudon and start kind of going nuts with it because once Thundurus hits +2 speed again, it's still threatening Charizard a decent amount. Like Wild Charge is still doing a lot of damage. Brick Break can knock away any screens, and like Max Airstream is still very useful to the Pokemon around it, especially if I'm doing something damage to something like Groudon, which is heavily reliant on walling a lot of my my special attackers like Calyrex or just walling Groudon in general, biding time for Zard to come back in and just knock everything out. Another matchup, like we talked about this before again and again, is Trick Room. Trick Room sucks. It was one of those matchups I did not want to run into, but unfortunately, like just having a team, I would rather have a team that has balanced answers to everything than have a team that kind of goes all in on doing one trick specifically. So which is like once again why we decided on Safety Goggles Taunt, just because you need a backup into those matchups. And fortunately, I did only play one Calyrex Palkia between both tournaments. And even so, it's just having Taunt in general. Like you can lead something like Instant Venusaur, and it pressures a lot immediately because if they don't have Tapu Fini, they're immediately susceptible to Sleep Powder. But even if they do have Tapu Fini, something like you can just do is super hard read into that and go for Max Ooze and like taunts and stuff like that. Like they're just having the options available to you because admittedly in GS Cup, it's kind of hard to find something that like suits your specific tastes. And for a long time, I struggled with that. And this team was fortunately just something that I happened to landed on and I felt very good about. But like, I think it's very easy to build a team in GS Cup that is very one trick, that it aligns itself to doing one specific thing and doing that one specific thing very good. And it's easy to say, we'll just dodge this specific matchup, which I did admittedly jokingly say like 3 times throughout like both tournaments. I'm like, I'll just dodge Calyrex like Palkia. which I guess kind of worked out. But it was just even having the matchup in general, just having the confidence to go into it and knowing that like, yeah, it's winnable and you can win it, was just very good in general. I'm trying to think about any other matchups that I could have like particularly faced. Like Calyrex Zacian is another one that was like, I didn't get a lot of prep into it. But I kind of knew how I wanted to play balanced teams like that, where it was like, you can kind of just overwhelm them with Groudon, and leading Calyrex Groudon is a very viable answer into a lot of things, actually, where you just, because Groudon is usually going to be slower than something like a Kyogre, or like, because it's so tanky in Dynamax, you can kind of just sit there and not care about what hits Groudon, because if they aren't hitting Groudon, they're hitting Calyrex, and Calyrex is already moved by then and put everything in Astral Barrage, or like in max Quake range from Astral Barrage. So it's like you're either knocking out one thing or the other. And something like Thundurus isn't doing a whole lot into Groudon because it's so physically tanky. And Zacian, even at +1, is struggling to land not so much impactful damage, but like damage that's winning the game, because even though it's chunking you for like 50%, it's like it's not knocking you out with something like Max Airstream and Astral Barrage to follow it up. It's you're still taking knockouts that they don't want you to. And in an end game like that, where something like Gastrodon and Incin can just kind of wall, it's really strong, because you may have thrown out all of your resources, but you also just knocked out all of their big resources. So Gastrodon and Incin can kind of just come in comfortably and win the game from there.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I guess the one other matchup that I would say, at least is a really big matchup for me to consider nowadays, especially over the last month, is Lunadon. I know you played that in top 8. We got to watch you play it. How did you approach that matchup?
Okay, yeah. So my bad. It's similar. It's kind of like a blend of Rinya Sun and Calyrex Shadow Rider teams, where it's like you have the tools to confront both. If they have a Charizard specifically, which Joe did. It was like, okay, I have Thundurus that kind of scares that away, which is what I tried leading game 1. Didn't work out so well. But I also have tools just in general to play that kind of slow mode that Lunala kind of wants to force out of its opponents, because Lunala is one of those Pokemon that like is very good, but it's also because something like Groudon is so inconsistent with its speed stat, generally just because player preference, like you choose how much speed you want to invest in Groudon. It's generally inconsistent for a Pokemon like Lunala, and it struggles to find a solid middle ground to run its speed stat at, because you can set up Trick Room and whoops, now the Groudon underspeeds you on the other side and you kind of just look stupid. But having Shadow Claw is like a really good tool into it. Just having Calyrex Groudon is kind of like the miracle matchup restricted pairing into like opposing ghost type plus restricted, where like Calyrex kind of scares everything out because it's a ghost type, and then surprise, Groudon also has a ghost type move, so like you can't even escape it there. But like Groudon's also just very physically tanky. It can Dynamax and it's comfortable Dynamaxing, so it doesn't really care about what the opponent throws out. Generally, like in mine Joe's top 4 match, you kind of see it with accompanying Pokemon like Grimmsnarl and Incineroar, which are very standard Pokemon to kind of accompany builds. So I didn't really have to worry about those. It was pretty much just worrying about what mode they wanted to play. Did they want to play Trick Room, or did they want to play their Max Airstreamer, which is usually either Thundurus, Charizard, etc. So it's kind of like the best of both worlds. You have the offense to deal with their offensive mode, and you have the defense to deal with their defensive modes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Were there any other matchups that you had prepared for very specifically, or were really scared to face?
I guess I can say the only matchup that I kind of expected to run into more was Yveltal. Mainly just because people are going to look at this team and they're going to think, oh, Yveltal beats it. And I can't confidently say they're like right, but they're not wrong either. Yveltal's kind of scary, but it's kind of very dependent on what it's paired up with. But I was talking about not maxing Thundurus earlier, but the matchup into that 90% of the time is you kind of just leave Thundurus Groudon and bait them into going for either Groudon or Thundurus, because you're kind of winning the scenario either way. You either don't max Thundurus and now they go for Groudon, so you pretty much just get the best defense possible. Like you get the best defensive turn possible, and you also get the best offensive turn possible because you can wild charge their Thunderous, or you can wild charge their Yveltal for a good chunk of damage, even if it's doing like 80% of your health with Thunderous, like having 0 HP in general. And then Max Rockfall can oftentimes just pick it up after a wild charge. If they don't max, it's definitely knocking out. But if they do max, it's like pretty easy to knock it out most of the time. And like it's kind of funny because you can just bait them into like doing that. Like sometimes they'll just like max Darkness into Groudon, and now I have a +2 Defiant Thunderous plus a max Groudon. So it's like they really struggle to beat that now. Like it was unfortunately something I didn't run into though, so I didn't get to show it off at all. I think I played it once at Secaucus, and that was it.
Yeah, it definitely fell off a little bit, other than its win at Milwaukee Regionals. I think you were on the other side of the bracket.
I did play Jay in Swiss, and I did lose there. And like immediately, that's what I was kind of referring to when it was like it kind of depends on what Yveltal's paired up with, because he had bulk up Groudon, and I beat him game 1. But Groudon almost like 1v3'd me back because bulk up was so potent, and I was like, I do not know how I beat this Pokemon. Like,
yeah. And so I guess on that note, do you want to talk about some of the notable matchups that you faced over the course of your run at the North American Championships?
Yeah. So I'll kind of start with a couple of sets from day 1, and then a couple of sets from day 2, and then I'll go through cut if that's cool. Like not a whole lot for day 1, but like so I kind of started off the day like really strong. I played 2 of the worst matchups possible. I played Kyurem White into the only Calyrex Palkia I played, and it was from a really strong Japanese player called Taka Makaneshi, I believe. And that set was like really close. But I wanted to talk about my round 7 match, which was a match, like elimination match. Because I started out 3-0. I was like, okay, cool. I'm 3-0 going into lunch break. I feel really good. Round 4, I get mopped by my opponent. It was like a literal god-awful matchup, which I will get back to later because it is not the end of that matchup, unfortunately. And then round 6, I played Guillermo Castilla, who I just kind of mind gamed myself out of, unfortunately. He said I played well, but I was not very I was adamant. I was like, I don't feel like I played that well, and I just don't feel really good now about the tournament in general. So I was X2, and I needed to basically win the next 3 rounds to make day 2 because my res was pretty terrible. So I play my opponent, who is Noah Pila. I believe that's how I'm pronouncing it. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing it right. I played him a couple times before at locals. And his team was like super by the books standard. It was Rillaboom, Alecki, Grimmsnarl, Incin, Zashi, and Kyogre. And I was like, okay, this is a doable matchup. Game 1, I lost with Gastrodon and Gastrodon and Groudon into Dynamax Regieleki with no Rillaboom on his side. And in my head, I was kind of just like, what am I doing? Like, oh my God. Like, I felt like an idiot. And game 2, I kind of do this call where I was like, I'm going to max Groudon and just kind of see how it plays out. Because at this point in the tournament, I was just like kind of depressed. I was like, nah, I'm just going to do things and see if they work out. And like, he maxes Rillaboom at -1. And it just so happens to crit. It's a G-Max Drum Solo onto Groudon. And Oko's it. And I'm like, oh my God, the tournament is done. I'm going home. Like, this sucks. I hate everything. But kind of in that moment, and I noticed this in a lot of like my like eventual winning tour runs, is that I have this moment where like I'm completely at rock bottom, like just feeling mentally terrible. And all it takes is really one game to get back into it. And this would just so happen to be one of those games where it was Calyrex Shadow, Incin, and Gastrodon versus a Dynamax full HP Rillaboom, a moderately like high HP Kyogre, a Grimmsnarl, and a Zacian, who were both at full HP. And I can't really recall the events of this game because it's kind of just like a blur in my head, but I can distinctively remember just telling my brain, like, it's not over just yet. Might as well play it out. And like, if the game wants me to win, it will let me win. So I land Will-O-Wisp on a Rillaboom, and it's like in -2 now. So like I'm in a decent spot, and then I kind of just start clicking Astral Barrage over and over and over again, and it just so happens to work out. And then it pretty much just comes down to whether Gastrodon lives a play rough or not from Zacian. It lives on like 2 HP. And I was like, well, I guess the game wants me to win. So, and then I went into game 3 and I was capable of winning. I don't remember that game at all. I'm sorry, but it was kind of like my rock bottom moment of the tournament where I was like, I can't do this, but then suddenly I can do this. And I think it just kind of goes to show like the winner can be anyone in a Pokemon tournament. You can literally be on death's doorway at the run, like the end of the run, and something will just simply either click or something will let you win. It's just kind of how the game works. And I didn't forfeit once throughout all of NAIC or Milwaukee like prematurely. I just played every game out to the end. Which is, I think, is just a very good thing in general to do, because some people can just lose games prematurely because they don't play out to the very end. And sometimes you do have outs like that. And I think everyone should play out to the end like that. So I was feeling a lot better after winning that, because I was like, I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. I was just telling myself that over and over again. And then I get a pair up round 8 into Marcus Statter, which was like, oh my God, are you kidding me? And Marcus was running like borderline the exact same 6 Pokemon. The only difference was that he had swapped out his Grimmsnarl for a Gothitelle. So I was like, okay, same matchup. I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. I win game 1. I lose game 2 miserably because I missed Sleep Powder like twice, and then he crits everything. And I was like, well, that was a wash. Like, game 3 was a really good like set. Like game 3, I pretty much got like I got the lead call right, and then he was pivoting really well. And this is kind of one of those dynamics of the Groudon Kyogre matchup in general with like 6 Pokemon like that. Where I have Gastrodon and I have Venusaur and I have like all these Pokemon that beat Kyogre kind of, but like there was a point in the match where he had Rillaboom and Kyogre out. Rillaboom had already taken a turn on the field, so Fake Out wasn't an option. And I had predicted I just predicted a switch in because I played game 1 super defensively where I was pivoting nonstop with my Pokemon that weren't named Venusaur. I was just pivoting in and out with Groudon and Ensign. And generally because I like part of the like cool thing about this team is that because I can play so defensively, it kind of gives the opponent a false sense of security that I will just simply do things game 3 because I've been doing them before. And when you can get into your opponent's head like that, it's really strong because you can pretty much just decide the whole game for them. Like you can just decide to win. That sounds stupid, but like,
no, I get it. You just like, you have a moment of clarity, right? And you're like,
yeah.
oh, I know they're going to do exactly this because we've been playing this game.
Like I'll play the game for you, bro. Don't worry. It's fine. But like, a lot of the times against Kyogre teams like that, I played super defensively game 1 and 2, and it gives them this idea that they will just simply switch into Kyogre game 3, like hard switch, not even pivot. Which is exactly what happened. I called him to just hard switching Kyogre, and I stayed in with Groudon, and I clicked Precipice Blades in front of the Rillaboom, and I switched in instant. I was like, all right, this is exactly where I wanted to be, although he can just Dynamax and kill like anything with this Kyogre. So I got the call right, but it still was like a negative turn because he could just max Kyogre and like that's rough. And this at this point it was like pretty much just a mind game where it was like I'm going to call his bluff because he loses more by Dynamaxing Kyogre and inviting in something like Venusaur here than he does by like just not maxing and like hoping for something positive, because I could just not Fake Out. I could just be scared of it and Parting Shot, and he can just go for Origin Pulse, and that's like insanely horrible. And I called his bluff and I clicked Fake Out into the Kyogre and Blades hit and killed it. And it did an insane chunk of damage to his Zacian. So I was like, this is literally the best turn I could have asked for, because his last Pokemon was Regieleki. And I had Ensign, Calyrex, Groudon, and Venusaur. And I was like, all right, that's game, like perfect. And then round 9, I played versus my friend Brady Smith, who I was literally sitting next to him and his girlfriend Kylie Chua. When the pairings got announced, I was like, all right, one more. I can do this. And for like slight context, this was my second Internats in Masters. My first Internats, I had went 6-3. I had lost the winning into day 2. And I was like crushed. I was so mad and just like angry at myself. And everyone was like telling me, it was a good performance for your first Internats. I was like, not good enough though. Like I want to do better. So I was extremely nervous going into this last round, but I just kept telling myself, I was like, one more set. I can do this. I can win this. And I knew what Brady was running. So I was like pretty comfortable. It was pretty much just standard Kali Zacian, but with a Whimsicott over the Rillaboom. And I was like, all right, I'm pretty confident into this matchup. Game 1, I win very confidently. Like, I pretty much just did the matchup I described earlier where I led Calyrex and Groudon, and I was able to kind of just sweep through his board pieces because Groudon's such an unstoppable like monster if it's not getting Will-O-Wisp or anything. And he was scared of my Thundurus lead, so he didn't bring Incineroar until the very like end of the game, which was like really good for me. So game 2, I'm like, okay, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. We're going to leave the same thing, do the same things again. He leads Thundurus Incin instead of Thundurus Zacian this time around. And I was like, okay, this should be fine. I'm going to click Will-O-Wisp, and I'm going to click Max Quake. Will-O-Wisp misses, and I'm like, crap, that's game. Like, he airstreams imparting shots into my grounds. The grounds then -2. I'm like, this was a very stupid decision by me. I Max Quake into a Calyrex. I break its Focus Sash. I do like 50%. And from there, I'm like, oh god, this is gonna suck because Calyrex has already taken the damage. Its Focus Sash is broken, and now he can just either click Astral Barrage or Will-O-Wisp. And Calyrex goes down the turn. That turn, I click Will-O-Wisp, or he clicks Will-O-Wisp into Groudon. So Groudon's now at -4. I'm like, this is terrible. I'm gonna lose this game, but I'm gonna play it out anyways because there was one hope, and I'll like kind of describe it. It was kind of just hoping that he would tunnel vision in on having such a good position that like he wouldn't do anything to defensively pivot, because when you're like in such a strong position like that, you kind of just want to keep going with the damage output. You just want to kind of keep attacking and attacking and attacking. Eventually they'll die and you'll win the game. So I just tried playing defensively from there. Like Calyrex goes down. I didn't purposefully protect because I wanted to get Gastrodon in. I wanted to start getting those Max Quake boosts. And I Rockfall just to burn a turn because it wasn't worth it to Quake into the Calyrex again and give him a free switch in. And I wanted to do some damage to Thundurus to line it up with an Ice Beam for later. So I click Shadow Claw into the Calyrex. It drops, and I click Ice Beam. The Thundurus decides to click Fly this turn. And next turn, it crits my half HP Groudon, and I'm like, oh my god, are you kidding me? Like, because I would have been able to knock out, or I would have been able to click Blades into the Zacian and do like decent damage. But Ice Beam does land onto the Thundurus, and I'm able to knock it out. So now it's just Incin and Zacian versus my Incin and Gastrodon, which is horribly chunked from +1 play rough. No, it was Sacred Sword. My bad. It's hard to remember now. It's been like a week away, but the point was that it took a lot of damage just from like an Astral Barrage plus a +1 Sacred Sword, and it was not looking very hot. There was still an out, and I was kind of just hoping to go on it. And this is going to sound horribly stupid of me to do in a game 2 where this is potentially like on the line, like can win to go to day 2. I look away for like 5 seconds to see what's happening on the stream because there's also a match going on stream. And it just so happens to be when Incineroars are exchanging Intimidates. So I don't see which one goes first. So I click Fake Out and Yawn into his Zacian, and I see his arms go up and like go back down because my Incin moves first. And I see he clicks Fake Out into my Incin. He was like, oh my god, dude. I was like, what? He was like, we speed tied. Like I wasn't expecting you to go for that. I was like, oh. Like so I get the Yawn off on the Zacian, and I'm like, okay, this is like actually winnable now. So I just protect and go for Flare Blitz because I'm like, there's no other play and there's no reason to Parting Shot because I can't risk Gastrodon like getting knocked out anyways, and like the Zacian wakes up and stuff. So I was like, just go for Flare Blitz, do the damage to put it in range for Gastrodon. The Flare Blitz burns, of course. So now Zacian is going to stay awake. So I'm like, great waste of a turn there. And Incin takes all this damage for free. So I was like, well, that was fan-freaking-tastic. He luckily Sacred Swords into Incineroar, though, and it drops. But his Throat Chop just does enough, like literally just enough to not knock me out, and it's enough to heal back with leftovers. Not like just heal back like a little bit of it. I mean like exactly heal back just enough damage that he's doing to me. So like any crit would have knocked me out from that range, and I was like, oh my god. And so I Earth Power the Zacian. The burn actually picked it up, so I was like, I guess it was useful for something. And now it's just Gastrodon versus Incin, and I'm able to get the sleep roll in my favor and knock it out with Earth Power. And I was like, oh my god, that was the worst game ever. But I gotta commend Brady. He's like one of my best friends ever. And he made day 2 anyways, which is really funny. So that's like pretty much everything from day 1. Like my last 3 rounds were super stressful, but it kind of just reinforced this idea in my head that was like I'm finally at day 2. This is exactly what I wanted. I feel fantastic, and I can do this. Like I can do this, and I just kept telling myself that I'm gonna sound like a broken record by the end of this like video. I'm gonna sound like a stupid anime protagonist, but like I was like, I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. I was just going around like telling people that. So day 2 starts, and I won't try and go over most of these matchups because they were all really good matchups with my opponents. But you can watch my sets with Tang, TSL Tang. All right, I'm hoping I'm saying this name like Xialang Tang. I played him round 11, or round 10. Really good set. You can watch that on the Wobblefets channel. So I won't elaborate much about that. Round 11, I play Zhe Zhang, who is the Milwaukee Regional Championships winner, and I had lost to him at that regional too. So we were kind of running it back like 1 week afterwards. And he was running an extremely different team this time. And this was one of those matchups where I kind of described earlier, where it was like, they're going to lead Charizard because it's their strongest mind game into you. It forces a lot of decisions turn 1 that you don't want to have to make because they're so uncomfortable. And like game 1 and 3, I just went for it. I was like, I'm going to max lightning your Charizard and I'm going to kill it. And like, that's exactly what happened. I was like, yes, like it worked out. I don't look like an idiot. Like, which is like, it was just something I kind of like figured out. Like, it's like game 3, Zard's like extremely mind gaming. Like they're going to go for it. Like, hopefully they're just going to go for it. It was something that like I played at Secaucus and I looked like an idiot there because that's exactly what the Zard went for game 3. And I lost Thunderous immediately. I was like, well, now I look stupid and now I just lose. So it was like, it's pretty much all or nothing. Like if you max lightning into Groudon, it's whatever because you still have damage that you can put out. You're not a complete waste of a max. So I ended up winning that set as well, in a very close set. Like all these, I'm gonna kind of breeze over these, but like all of these were extremely close sets with my opponents, and I do want to commend them because like we were all in day 2. They were all fantastic players, and like being able to win against them, I was like, it was no joke, like at all. All my sets went to game 3. So once again, I just gotta like say GG's to like everyone I played because for real, it was not an easy tournament. I literally 14 of my 17 sets went to game 3. I think I might have the worst winning record of an Internats champion ever. It was like 29-15. It was like, oh my god. But round 13, I think it was round 12. I play Eric Rios. And that was like one of those matchups you just don't want to ever see in your life. Like you open the pairings and you're like, oh my god, like I'm playing arguably the best player in the world right now. And it was like, oh my god. And it was on lunch break too. So we had like time to just sit there. And I'm one of those guys that like doesn't eat during lunch break. So I was just sitting there waiting for it to happen. I was like, well, here we go. I'm completely horrified because Eric Rios is one of the best players in the world. Literally the champion, European international champion. So I was like pretty much playing the guy that was like the best in the world. I think by premier rating, he actually was the best in the world. So I was like really scared going into it. I was like, but I had just played Tang, who had the exact same 6 as him before. So I was like feeling kind of, I was like, if I could beat Tang, I could beat Eric Rios. They're both some of the best players in the world. I just got to be confident that I can do this. So I just kept telling myself that. I had time to slightly mentally prep before lunch, like during lunch break, because I'm one of those people that just doesn't eat during lunch break. I'm very superstitious. But I won't describe it much because there is a stream match. You can watch it. But game 3, I kind of did a similar thing to Marcus and a lot of other players that I fought with similar compositions where, because I was playing so defensively game 1 and 2, I kind of just made them expect me to play super defensively game 3. And I was able to take advantage of that by just going on the offense, which was something that I did versus Eric. I forced Groudon in and I forced Kyogre in and basically got the sun up. Actually, no, that was a lie. I did not get the setup. The rain was up. But basically he expected me to switch out Groudon, so he went for the punish on Incineroar with the Dynamax, and he maxed Geysered into Incin. And I just stayed in and clicked Precipice Blades, so I knocked out the Grimmsnarl switch in, which was like really good. And I also got good damage on the Kyogre because Eric's Kyogre was like a bulky Life Orb variant that was like super duper slow. So it was like almost all on bulk and all on special attack. So it was perfect because it let me get Thundurus in, and it was one of those mind games where like it looks super simple on paper, but because Eric's one of the best players in the world, I think he kind of expected me to overread and go for something that was like max Airstream and Precipice Blades into his Zacian, because it's very obvious that he can just protect, and if he protects into my max Lightning, I just die. Like, he just Behemoth Blades twice into Thundurus and I lose. And it was one of those positions where, it seems really simple. It's just whether he protects or not. But it's one of those, like, turns that because, like, we're playing such high-level Pokemon and it's round 12 of an international championship, I figured that he was going to just try and believe that I would try and outmaneuver, like, his safest play. So I just clicked Max Lightning and didn't care. And it worked out. And I clicked Precipice Blades. I knocked out his Zacian, and it was just Rillaboom left versus Incin. Or no, it was versus Calyrex, Groudon, and Thundurus. And I was like, well, I think I won the game versus Eric Rios, which was definitely not something I was expecting to do. And round 13, I play Chong Junpeng, who you could argue is the best player in North America right now. So a very stacked, like, last 7 rounds of Pokemon that I've been playing. Chongjun's just an incredible player all around. He's bodied me several times at regionals before this, so like I was kind of nervous going in. But because he was undefeated, because he was guaranteed cut, I was kind of feeling confident no matter what, like win or lose. Because I was like, all right, well, I'm going to congratulate him, obviously, but I feel pretty good going into this, like, win or lose, because I think I will just get the res no matter what to make cut. Although no X4s made it, so very thankful I won this one to begin with anyways. But because it was standard Rinnia Sun, it was kind of just like the same beats that I've described before, where I lead Instant Thundurus and I kind of just no fear it, where Max Lightning into Zard, if it switches to Groudon, I don't care. And that's exactly what happened game 1. He switched to Groudon and tried to trick Iron Ball into Thundurus, which he did get off, but I was able to, I think, luckily dodge a Blades. I don't know whether I would have lived it or not, but Instant survives the turn, and because, like, Thundurus can just max Airstream and continue to max Airstream, once it gets off one max Airstream, it already outruns Groudon and Grimmsnarl again, even with the Iron Ball. So it was still pressuring an insane amount, and once I had gotten Groudon in, instead of Incineroar, I was already threatening him like super hard once again. And this is luckily a game 2 that I remember. I tried doing something different, which is like, don't ever try something different against Grimmsnarl Charizard, just a lesson. I tried going for Taunt to stop him from setting up screens with his Grimmsnarl, which I did call. Like, it was right. Like, he max guarded. I just protected Thundurus. I was like, all right, perfect. Like, he set up Reflect instead of tricking, which was like the downfall anyways. I was like, well, he got what he needed off anyways, so like I kind of just die now. And that's exactly what happened. Charizard clicked Max Wildfire. It died the turn literally right after, and like at that point it was already game because it knocked out Thundurus. It got what it wanted to do. And he had Max Phantasm on his Groudon as well, so I was like, oh, this sucks. Like, or he had Shadow Claw on his Groudon too, and I was like, well, he has it, so there's no way I can win this game because he's just gonna knock out Calyrex immediately. So game 3, he leads an insanely, like, just super offensive, like, anti-Thundurus lead. He leads Groudon, Zacian, and I lead Instant Thundurus. I'm like, he is just going to max Groudon and kill everything. And it was like, oh, this sucks, because I didn't want to max Thundurus, and I was like, at this point, I just need to play patiently and burn his turns of max. So that's exactly what I did. I just clicked Fake Out and Brick Break into his Zacian. I was like, I might as well just put it in range of Precipice Blades, because I don't want to have to force a max like immediately with Groudon. And he just straight up, like, he Rock Falls, kills Thundurus. Then Incin pretty much goes away the next turn as well. And I force him to, I force a I forced my switch into Groudon. I forced his switch into Instant after Zacian goes away. But his Groudon's already maxed, so I was like pretty confident that like if it's Zard in the back, I just like have a very strong position against him because now I can just click Astral Barrage and Max Quake into the Instant slot and nothing comes in safely. Even if he tries to Phantasm or break my Focus Sash, like I don't think there's a lot he can do. Which was like one of those things where like it's rewarding even to bring Thundurus, but to bait out his Dynamax because I forced his Dynamax early and then I maxed with my Groudon and I was able to sweep through the rest of the team because he was so invested into getting rid of Thundurus because he expected me to just max it and hope for the best with it. And it like I knock out his Instant and it turns out to be Charizard in the end game. Which was exactly what I was like hoping for. And Calyrex is able to knock both of them out with Astral Barrage. And now I'm 4-0 and I've cut NAIC and I was extremely happy. And I was just like, it was one of those moments where like, if you know me, I popped off and I kind of screamed like a baby and I was like, yes, like my hat went flying. But I was just really happy to make cut at my second Masters Internats. And I was like, I felt like this was the goal was top 8. The goal was just initially top 8. I was super happy to have made it this far. I was like, I know this team's great. I know I can do this. Like it just felt perfect. Round 14, I played Joe and both of us didn't care enough to play the set. So he just forfeited and I gotta commend him. I didn't want to play that set and we just chilled for the round and it was awesome because we both made cut anyways. So we kind of chilled for a while and then top 8 gets posted and I play Terran Birdie in top cut and he's 8th seed, I'm 1st seed. And normally I would be like, okay, cool. It's like good good player. Let's just keep up the pace. Like I'm doing good. I can do this one more away from top 4 and top 4 seals my day 2 Worlds invite as well as giving me a travel award to the next international. So I was like, all right, I can do this. No pressure. Except as soon as I found out Terran's team, I started like sweating bullets because it just so happened to be the exact same 6 that I got like 4-0'd by in day 1, like round 4. I got like 4-0'd, 2-0'd. It was like, oh my God, no. Like this is terrible. But I was like, I just kind of had to like swallow the fear, just say I could do this. And there was one extremely notable thing about this matchup that was different than the one I played round 4. And that was that the Whimsicott didn't have Charm. The Whimsicott that I played round 4 had Charm and it completely neutered my Groudon. And I was like, I can't kill anything on this team. Like Charizard's too threatening. Whimsicott just shuts down my team too hard. Kyogre and Zacian are too scary to deal with. Like it's extremely difficult. Terran's Whimsicott did not have Charm, and he didn't even try to go for it game 1, so I was like, perfect. He brought Thundurus instead. So I was like, all right, one more game and I can win this and I'm in top 4. And to describe how I'm feeling like right now, it's very hard to describe this, but like there has only ever been one time in Pokemon where I felt like this nervous, and that was top 8 of Worlds in 2018. Which is very justifiable because that was also a terrible matchup that I somehow won. But game 2, he leads Amoonguss Charizard, and I've already kind of described that Amoonguss is like a nightmare Pokemon for this team, but like Amoonguss and Charizard, I was like, oh God, this sucks. Like this is terrible. But I went super hard in on this read. I maxed my Calyrex instead of Groudon, which is like kind of a thing that you should never do. But I was like, he's going to hard read like this turn and just like go in. Like, he's going to Rage Powder and he's going to attack with Zard. And this is where Max Mindstorm comes into play. You can Oko something like Amoonguss, which is exactly what happened. I Max Mindstorm into the Amoonguss. It Okos, and I'm like, all right, all Groudon needs to do is hit this Stone Edge and I win because there's no Charty Berry. If there was, it's unnerve blocked and I have Sash, so I can't die this turn anyways. And Stone Edge misses, and like my hands were so numb at that point, and in my head I could just hear like screaming. I was like, oh my God, no. Like all I needed to do was hit that Stone Edge and I won. Because like even the subsequent turn I hit the Stone Edge and it still lost me the game. And I was so nervous. I was like, oh my God, please don't tell me I just lost off a Stone Edge miss. Like the one time I needed it. So game 3, like I lose game 2 pretty confidently because Wildfire's up and like I can't do anything about the Zacian and Kyogre in the back. Game 3, he leads Whimsicott and Kyogre. And like this was the point where I was like, people had told me it was Cotton Sport, but I was like, well, I'll see it when I believe it. Like if he clicks Charm here, I'm like just like, oh my god, I hate everything. But he sets up Tailwind, he gives up the Kyogre turn 1 to Astro Barrage Max Quake, and he just Water Spouts. And like everyone in the crowd was like, oh my god, this is amazing for James, let's go. And all I could think about in my head was, this is exactly what happened turn 1 of game 1 against my opponent round 4. And I was like, it's not over yet. Like I can't hold my breath like now. Like it's still not over. He's got Charizard and Zacian in the back. But it was still very good because Groudon's just kind of going on like a rampage now. Like it kind of just runs through the team if he's not Charm. So he brings in Zacian, and I'm like, I'm just gonna click Max Quake and Astral. Like there's nothing else I need to do here. It would be stupid to like overread at this point. And he switches out to Charizard with his Zacian, and I'm like, this is perfect. Like Astro Barrage is gonna do a ton to this thing, and I pick up Whimsicott this turn. The only downside is that Max Quake goes into Zard, but like at that point I was like, all right, it doesn't matter. It literally just comes down to this one thing. And that one thing just so happened to be, does Groudon live Behemoth Blade or not? Because I can't risk switching out Instant. Like I can't switch Calyrex to Instant at this point, because if I do, then I risk him doubling Groudon, and I straight up just lose the game then, because there's no coming back from that in Tailwind. And I like Calyrex just can pick off Zard if he doubles into Groudon. So it literally came down to whether just Groudon lived the Behemoth Blade or not. And I was at like probably 55%. And I end up living, and I don't think I've ever popped off harder in my life. Like my heart was racing. I was on the verge of tears. I was just so happy to make top 4. Like, it meant a lot to me personally, just because like the entire, I don't want to say like I got unlucky the entire season, but like you can kind of like point out like, oh, you bubbled Secaucus, and then like you lost top 4 in Milwaukee to double Heat Wave burn into Water Spout crit. And it's like, you can look at all of those things and be mad about them. And like, there were a lot of my friends that were like peeved by that. They were like, you should have won or you should have cut. And it was like, in my head, I was like thinking, I was like, I could have, like, I know I could have. And like, I know I could have won those things. And it's very easy as a player to get caught up on what could have been instead of what you can do in the future. And I just kept telling myself that it all happens for like a reason. Like like you don't lose here and you don't lose there just to lose in the end. Like it all leads to something. And I was very happy to just say like, it led to me being here. I'm very happy to just be here and be like happy, and all my friends were happy, and I'm very happy I could make them proud. Like I was very happy I could have my friends and family see me on the stage and fight in top 4. And then top 4 actually happened, and I had to play Joe, who we agreed not to play the set in Swiss, but now we were absolutely forced to. And one of the points Joe brought up during like the Swiss round, he was like, I don't really want to play you like this round, because if we play and like one of us wins, like then it would be like really stupid if we played him top like cut and then one of us won like a really stupid way. I'm like, that's insanely fair. I'd rather just have it be the one set that we play, and it's like just whoever wins. And Joe had like a team, like I was very content at just like ending the run at top 4, but like when you're that deep in a run, it's like I was like, I might as well go all the way, because like you're never gonna get this chance ever again. At least I hope I do. Like that would be very nice, but like you gotta play every tour like it's your last. So I was pretty confident going into the matchup, because I had played the same 6 round 3, but like a very different player. This is Joe we're talking about, one of the best players in North America, if not the best player in North America, one of the best players in the world. And I had to be ready for him, like no matter what. So game 1, I kind of played like based off he will go Zard and like try and win with Zard. And that didn't work out very well, as you could probably see. Like that match was also streamed. You can watch my match versus Terran as well on the Wobblefest channel, but this was on the stream. So game 1 didn't go very well, because I kind of made a super half-baked play after turn 1, and Joe made a very good play turn 2, which was setting up Trick Room, because once he had gotten Lagging Tail onto Groudon, there was pretty much no fear of it. And this is one of those scenarios where like Lunala's speed stat is so inconsistent that he couldn't bank on it being faster or slower. Like once it was just slower because of the Lagging Tail, he felt comfortable like no matter what, because Trick Room was up, and now both his Grimmsnarl, even though it had an Assault Vest and it couldn't do anything, it was still underspeeding. It was still like outrun Calyrex, and they could finish off Calyrex before anything. Now that Trick Room was up, and Groudon was moving last anyway, so it didn't matter. So game 2, I was like, all right, he's probably going to try and do that again. Let's go the other lead that I have, which is Calyrex Venusaur, into something like that, which is a much slower lead. It's designed to anticipate Lunala because you either kill it with Astral Barrage plus Vine Lash, or you put it to sleep. You have a lot of tools into it. And then he leads Grimmsnarl Charizard, so I was like, of course, like, now what? So this is unfortunately one of those moments where you kind of just have to bank on Sleep Powder doing Sleep Powder things, and I land it. He does wake up immediately, though. Like, he gets turn 1 wake, and it does a ton of damage into my Groudon. He tricks away the Assault Vest, too, so my Sludge Bomb doesn't do a whole lot into Grimmsnarl. And now Wildfire's up, so even though I traded with... I knocked out his Charizard, and my Groudon was still alive. It was still a very bad position because Groudon was moving last no matter what, and I needed to figure out a way to, like, break through his Groudon, his Incin, and his Grimmsnarl. So he brings Incin, I think... No, he brought in Groudon, and then he... Oh, no, he brought in Incin. I'm stupid. Never mind. It's hard to remember these things, but, like... And there's anything I bring up that's wrong, there's a game recorded on YouTube to go back and be like, well, that clearly didn't happen, but here's what actually happened. But all I can remember about that game 3 or game 2 is kind of the end game where, like, it was Calyrex Incin, so Groudon got knocked out, Venusaur got knocked out. And I was pretty much just relying on Calyrex to kind of sweep by boosting because I was getting the Grimmsnarl low, I was getting the Incineroar low. And this is where Joe revealed his Protect Incin, which I had saw versus Jay, but I kind of like blanked and forgot that it existed because, to be fair, it wasn't really needed up until that point. But it was able to buy him time because it meant that it wasn't becoming single target Astral Barrage at +2 onto a Groudon, and his Groudon was like super tanky. So there was like this genuine threat now. Like I needed to do enough damage in the next couple turns to win the game or else I lose because Groudon will just out damage me. He gets the double protect, which is like, obviously that's what he should go for, but it still stung because I was like, oh, god dang it. Now I just lose. Like there's no way out. And then the fated moment happens where he misses Precipice Blades into Incineroar, decides to suddenly I'm stumbling over words, crit Flare Blitz, and then burn it. And I was like, oh my god, like, yes, finally, something went my way. Like, and in the moment, I kind of said it on stream, like, it didn't matter. The burn definitely didn't matter, but the crit might have. I'm not sure, but like, all I needed was just that damage to put it in range of Astral Barrage, which is like, it probably was more likely a roll in the sense that, like, if it didn't crit, it was definitely probably a roll. But because it crit, it was 100% not a roll, and Calyrex was able to just finish the game off, even if it was trumped by Precipice Blades because it was guaranteed living the turn no matter what. So game 3, like, nerves are really high. I'm like, I can do this. Just one more. Like you won that game, and that game was like every odd was stacked against you. So I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. So he leads the same thing. I lead the same thing as well. This time though, I decide to, or no, I lead Groudon Venusaur instead of Calyrex Venusaur because I was like, I just want to take the advantage immediately. I can't risk him, kind of leading something like extremely offensive with I can't like risk him, just like kind of playing defensively with the Zard and then like taking it away from me because I didn't lead something as offensive. So Groudon Venusaur was the go-to like offensive lead. So I was like, okay, I'm going to Sleep Powder this Grimmsnarl instead because if I'm knocking out Zard this turn, then I don't need to Sleep Powder it, even if it's getting Wildfire off because it's either trading with Venusaur or it's not letting, like, or it's trading with Groudon and both of them live the turn then anyways. So he tricks Lagging Tail onto Venusaur and he switches Incin for Charizard. And I was like, oh, well, now I look stupid because I just maxed Groudon. Like, but it kind of worked out in my favor anyways, because what happens next is like kind of improv, but this is kind of those plays that you have to make when you're like in top 4 internets. And I think this is where the stream went out. Like I heard the stream went out during the top 4 set. So I'm going to try my best to elaborate what happened in this game 3 from here on out. So Rockfall goes into Instant and it does like probably 60% because it's still max Rockfall from Groudon and it hurts. And at this point, Grimmsnarl was asleep. It had tricked Cobra Berry onto itself, and then it tricked Lagging Tail onto Venusaur. So I was like, all right, well, Venusaur's not going first anymore. But what I can do is I can double the Instant slot with Max Quake and Weather Ball, because now that the sand's up, I can hit Charizard with Weather Ball. And this is like one of those funny things where Weather Ball can come into play and like do something really funny. Unfortunately, it didn't come into play like as I had hoped, but it was the best middle ground coverage like possible that I could do. And I'm still like I'm glad I at least got to show it off on stream, because people that did get to see it, like they were like, "Oh my god, this is the craziest play ever." I was like, I wish it worked, but like nonetheless, so the Weather Ball goes into Grimmsnarl and I get the Quake boost off onto Instant. So now Instant's gone and he goes into Groudon. And at this point, I'm figuring I'm like, it's all or nothing. Like, he's got to get rid of Venusaur, because if he just goes for Blades, like, he's not killing it. And then Venusaur gets off something dangerous. Like, it's either getting off Sleep Powder or Leaf Storm, and it doesn't want either of those to go off. So I switched to Instant. He Heat Crashes into Venusaur slot, like, which is perfect. I get a Max Quake off into Groudon, do good damage. Grimmsnarl stays asleep. And at that point, I'm pretty much just clicking, like, Precipice Blades and Fake Out. And, like, that's exactly what I did. I click Precipice Blades, I click Fake Out. I missed the Grimmsnarl. And I'm trying to remember. Like, I Fake Out, and then I think I just I hard switched to Calyrex the next turn. And I think Precipice Blades just misses again onto Grimmsnarl, so I'm like, oh, you gotta be kidding me, dude. Like, or no, it does hit. But it doesn't do a whole lot. And at this point, Grimmsnarl's already woken up and it's gone for Reflect. So I'm like, this really sucks, because I just have no way of like breaking through these two at -1 and behind Reflect. But Groudon's like low enough to the point where like it gets knocked out by Astral. So I was confident going for it anyways. Like, I was just confident clicking Blaze and Astral, because at that point he's only got Charizard left. And at that point I was like, the game's coming down to whether Stone Edge hits or not. So like, I just need to play to those odds. Something really fortunate does happen for me, though, in the fact that I crit the Grimmsnarl with Astral Barrage, and it definitely wouldn't have died to that because it was behind Light Screen and it's a Grimmsnarl. And basically, that is the game deciding turn, because if he doesn't get crit there's two things that happens. One, he gets the switch into Charizard, and Grimmsnarl is still alive. So what it can do is he can trick away my Focus Sash on Calyrex, and now I guarantee die to anything that it throws out. So like, it doesn't have to worry about setting up Wildfire that turn. It can just go for like Airstream into Groudon and knock it out. So that was like something I was genuinely scared of, like in the previous turns, and I was considering switching to Venusaur to have him trick the Lagging Tail back onto Grimmsnarl, and Venusaur gets its Cobra Berry back, so now it's outrunning it. But I just decided to stay in, because I was like, that's too specific of a play. Let's just keep attacking and see where it goes. So the crit absolutely mattered onto Grimmsnarl, because now Calyrex is at +2, and it forces him to target one or the other, because either Calyrex is going to outrun him the next turn and knock him out because it's now +2 single target. And it did do 50%, so it would have knocked out guaranteed after a double up, or like 2 turns of Calyrex just being on the field. Or he has to target Groudon, which is going to throw Stone Edge at him, which doesn't even care that it's -1. It's still going to do a monstrous amount. So it was basically 2v1 at that point. And once that had happened, as soon as Stone Edge hit, I had won the game, and I felt like really happy about that. And then I guess we just have finals left to talk about.
Yeah. So I guess, of course, finals is a whole different day. You had an entire night to prep. How are you feeling, and how did you prepare?
So similar vibes to what I brought up about not feeling this way since 2018 Worlds. This was like absolutely the first time I had felt like this way about since 2018 Worlds, where I was like, I can do this. Oh my God, I did not expect to get this far. I can do this. But like, there's so much nerves going into finals, even if I felt confident. Like, obviously there was the does Justin Burns win top 4? Because if Justin Burns wins top 4, I was like, all right, pack it up. Very content with my NAIC finalist trophy, because oh my God, this matchup is terrible. Fortunately, Gabrielle did win. which was like I looked back at my friends like, okay, we have a matchup, cool. Like, so like even though it was like a very standard build, I had played it a ton on ladder. Gabrielle is also one of the best players in the world, and I could not like disrespect any possibility that he brought anything to the matchup. The only Pokemon I was confident that he wouldn't bring was Incineroar because it was Assault Vest and it wasn't doing a whole lot in the matchup to begin with. The best way to describe it is like I kind of had that idea going in, but I didn't try and over prep finals. I think one of the things that like I tried not to do was let my nerves get to me. Because like I said, this was the first time I had felt this way about a tournament since 2018 Worlds. I was in finals of arguably one of the biggest tours of my life, and it's hard not to feel stressful about it. I couldn't eat and like I couldn't sleep for like half the night because it was just like I just wanted to be here so that way I don't have to deal with all of these emotions in my head. Like there's so much running through your head because like you can win, you can lose. There's just like I was so grateful for everyone who had supported me at that point. I was just thankful to be there. And I just had to keep telling myself like I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. But I did prep the matchup a little bit, although I think most of my matchup prep was the next day. Like I kind of had formulated a basic game plan against him because we figured that he was going to lead Tornadus Zacian, which he did. But he was going to bring Kyogre, which was like the one scary thing. And I was very like solidified on picking Calyrex, Incin, Groudon, Gastrodon as my 4. I figured Thundurus, this is a matchup where Thundurus doesn't want to come at all. Venusaur was a consideration because it beats Kartana and it beats Kyogre. But because Tailwind's always in play, it's not really worth it because if I lose resources too early, it still loses to something like Zacian, and I need Gastrodon to wall because Gastrodon can win versus Kyogre, Kartana, Zacian, Tornadus because it's just a good wall. Or if they don't even bring the Kyogre like we saw in finals, Gastrodon is still like a very key member to the team. So I kind of formulated a basic game plan like that revolved around those 4 because I was very comfortable bringing those 4 and I didn't want to like break out of the comfort zone because people think it's finals, like you got to like go all in with hard reads and stuff like that. And like, I was like, I got to play this one close to my chest, even though it's finals. Like it's still very nerve wracking. He's got to be nervous too. So like, I can't risk anything this game 1. I'm just going to play it like how I would normally play it. So like, that was like what a lot of my prep was, the day of finals was just kind of like talking with people, running like basic calcs. Like the main threat obviously was the Kartana. I brought it up during the interview during finals, but like Kartana was the scariest Pokemon by far. Him being Life Orb was just only beneficial to his team and like detrimental to mine because it just does more damage, and simply more damage is bad, especially with a Pokemon like Kartana where it snowballs so easily. Life Orb Kartana can OHKO Gastrodon through Protect with Max Overgrowth, and I was like, that sucks. Like, oh my god. So it had to be very wary of the Kartana, but a lot of what I described where it was like very earlier in this team report, if you want to run back all the way to like the first 10 minutes of it, where it was like Dynamax on this team can be used to just kind of take away from your opponent's Dynamax, where you can just like force them to remove resources from their team. And this was a battle of just straight up resources where we weren't, not so much him, but like we didn't want to pivot as much. Like I could pivot, but like Gabriel was not going to pivot at all because he had a very like he just wanted things to get in for free and do the damage, and then he was going to max something and try and snowball with that. So I figured I was very confident on leading Calyrex and Incineroar, and I was like, as soon as I get rid of Zacian, there's a very realistic chance that whatever he brings in next will either be Kyogre or Kartana. And at that point, whatever just has more HP on my end, I'm going to Dynamax. And because he's not, this was the one benefit of him being not a Soul Vest, was that Max Phantasm from my Calyrex will OHKO Kartana in Dynamax. So it gave me the impression that like whatever comes in next, I'm going to have to Dynamax whatever is healthier on my side, because Kartana and Tornadus can only like target one Pokemon at a time, or if they're going to target 2, they're not really doing a whole lot of damage to the Maxmon, or they're not doing a whole lot to the Incineroar or the Calyrex. Like they're both pretty good into Kartana. There was a line where Instant like Dynamaxes and like knocks them out if they bring Kyogre, because you have Instant on the field already. Zacian's gone. They're gonna bring in something like Hartana and then bring in Kyogre as a hard switch in from Tornadus to get the rain up, and then you switch into Groudon with Calyrex and Max Flare with your Instant, so you guarantee kill it. And you don't die to Max Knuckle or anything like that. But it never happened, unfortunately. I thought it would have been cool to Max Instant in finals. But it was a pretty by the books finals, all things considered. Like, it went very accordingly to how I wanted it to. The only like surprise was that he did not bring Kyogre both games, which I was very much prepping for. He brought Landorus and Kartana, and that was a consideration. We were like, well, what if he brings that? And I was like, well, I guess it works out anyways then, because he's not bringing Kyogre, so like, yeah, like it's fine. But it was very much just a battle of resources, and luckily, because my team is more defensive by nature, it was it worked out in my favor where I could play more aggressively because I didn't have to care about things dropping so quickly, unless he wanted to risk Hurricane, which I didn't. I was like, he's a very safe player. He double protected both turn ones of both games. Like, I figured he wasn't going to risk it unless he absolutely had to. So I was very confident just going for the double up on the Zacian turn 1 and then playing the way I did game 2. Maxing Groudon both games, just trying to take away from as much resources as possible with the Max Phantasm and the burning the White Herb, which I thought was like the coolest play ever. I was very happy I got to show that off.
Yeah. I mean, that play specifically was just such a brain. I don't know. that play was such a game changer for me, because I remember we were watching and we were like, oh, like Landorus kind of wins from here. It doesn't get intimidated. It has enough damage to win.
Yeah.
And then the Max Phantasm play was just incredible. And I think was probably the reason that you won that game.
Yeah, it was really close game 1, because like there was a specific line where he did win the game, but like it was all dependent on what I did. I just did the most basic play possible, but like after I had locked in, I was scared that he was going to click Max Knuckle and Earthquake with his Landorus, because I'm pretty sure that knocked out both my Pokemon. Fortunately, he didn't, and he decided to play the Rock Slide game, which is like, oh my god, in finals, please not like this. Like, this is not the way I want to go out. But Ensign luckily clutched it through and knocked out the Kartana, and Gastrodon carried from there. Game 2, I think I played rather sloppily, like, just because I was kind of like ego boosted from the Icy Wind miss, and I just let Gastrodon drop immediately after getting the yawn off. And like, as soon as Leaf Blade came out, and I was like, that was stupid. I'm stupid. Like, what if it's just Kyogre in the back? Like, fortunately, it was not, but I will say right now that endgame was extremely scuffed because Gotti had thought I was Shukaberry on the instant, which, to be fair, the open paste you got it from was. Remember when I said Matthias Long had used this team at Singapore Nats? That version was Shuka Instant, so he had that open sheet to go off of. So basically,
And of course, he shut off the team after Secaucus, and that was also Shukaberry. So he had a lot of reasons to believe it.
So jokingly, my friend said, yeah, your instant was basically running 2 items the whole tour. I was like, yeah, pretty much. But it was, I don't know how the endgame would have gone had he Max Quaked, because there's still the dynamic of Max Phantasm burning the White Herb, and then I get another Phantasm drop, because if the only reason I clicked Flare was that like Parting Shot was already down, so I was like, okay, I don't need to worry about decreasing his defense as much as I do just doing the damage. So let's set up the Sun, and we'll go for Fire Punches after we get out of Max. If he had Max Quaked there, I probably would have just gone for another Max Phantasm and completely ignored the Sun. And to be fair, I don't know how much damage I'm doing then, because keep in mind, he's still at neutral, so his Earthquake's doing a lot more, and my Fire Punch is doing probably roughly the same amount of damage. So I'm unsure how that end game would have gone. Needless to say, I did get a little lucky, and like I'm very okay admitting that like sometimes it's just you need good luck to go your way in a tournament this long and a run like this. But still, Agati's one of the best players in the world, and I said I wouldn't have had anyone else to play in finals, because he's just one of the best players in the world, and I'm really glad I got to play him.
Yeah. And I mean, he also had such an incredible run throughout the tournament. It was the finals itself. As a spectator, felt a little anticlimactic. It felt like it wasn't as exciting as it could have been. But that's just credit to you. And how, I mean, the lines that you thought of, again, I never would have saw the Max Phantasm line, but that really was just a huge game changer.
Yeah.
And I guess also your prep just being a little bit better than his in terms of not actually watching the stream and seeing that you were safety goggles, because that was revealed on stream.
Okay, some people told me, I was like, was it? And like, yeah, it was. I was like, oh, like,
Yep. I mean, I was helping Justin Burns prep, right? And so I mean, I guess we didn't do as good a job of preparation, not knowing that Agati didn't have protect. But I definitely registered while I was watching you play in top 4 that you were safety goggles in case it came up.
Okay.
But yeah, it was a really, really incredible run. So congratulations once again on becoming the North American International Champion. Did you have any final words or shout-outs that you want to give?
Oh my God, yes. All right. This might be another hour in of itself. First off, I want to give just a shout out to everyone who made this team the way it was. I already brought up Navjeet and Matthias, who contributed spreads and just like general information when building the team. Like, I'm just really grateful for like the feedback that I got from them in general that helped make this team the way it is. Like Navjeet helped a ton with this team pre-Secaucus, and Matthias pretty much helped a ton with it post-Secaucus. And I'm very glad that we could break the top 4 curse with it and finally get a win. I just want to thank my friends Kareem, Jackson, Will, Rob, pretty much everyone that was at NAIC that supported me. It really does mean a lot to me. I'm not generally the most confident in myself, but I knew with this team I had something good going, and I'm very thankful that just everyone was there to support me and believe in me when I didn't. I want to thank my family, my mom, my dad, who also believed in me. I was pretty much bouncing ideas off of them, even though they didn't understand anything. I was like, look, this team's super good. As long as I just play it well, I think I can win like anything. It's pretty much. I also want to give a shout out to everyone who helped me with the finals. Connix, VG, his name's Rahun in real life. I'm really horribly sorry if I mispronounced that, dude. But also Ink, who I believe just had a team report on your channel. His name's Siddharth, incredible New Jersey player. Expect a lot from him in the next couple of years, like actually goated player. But he helped with my finals matchup. He played Gotti in the win and and he gave me just a lot of information on how like Tornoger players play, because he is arguably probably the best Tornoger player in North America. And also Joe UX9, who helped me prep the finals. Although Joe recommended, he was like, dude, you should bring like Thunderous into the matchup. And I'm like, nah, I don't think I will. But it was still really good to bounce ideas off of him for the finals. It was just good to have people in my corner knowing that like they were supporting me. Also shout outs to Sierra for letting me borrow her Joy-Cons. My Joy-Cons have like horribly drifted like in half the tours that I played in. Like during the global challenge, I was like, all right, not playing with that like at all. So she let me her Joy-Cons for Secaucus and now this. So I really appreciate that. And pretty much anyone who I met over the last couple of weeks, I also just want to thank a lot. It really does mean a lot. Like I said, I'm not usually the most confident in myself, but it really did mean a lot hearing a lot of just kind words and support in general from people that I didn't know then, but I'm hopefully excited to get to know in the future. And I really hope I can make everyone proud again at Worlds. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, you got the Auto Day 2 invite, so looking forward to seeing you there. Looking forward to you get the travel award, so looking forward to presumably Brazil as well. You got a lot of chances to keep up your hot streak. Yeah, thank you again for coming on the channel. I really appreciate it. This was really, really insightful. And I definitely recommend that everyone tries out this team. It is definitely one of the strongest teams in the format. Obviously, no EV spreads, but James has been on stream, like 10, 12 times now. I'm sure you could figure it out. And yeah, again, thank you so much. Congratulations.
Thank you so much once again. Thank you once again for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
No, again, this channel wouldn't be the same without players like you who are willing to give all this incredible advice to everyone and willing to share your team. So I really appreciate it. And yeah, until next time, I will see you all later.